morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Patterson from Bryson Insurance, and today we are joined with Michael Castro of Risk Aware. Just a little bit about Michael to kick us off. So Michael is the Risk Executive Advisor and founder of Risk Aware Group. He is an IT leader with over 2 decades of experience building and leading information security, cyber risk, and compliance programs at the enterprise level. And Michael is a veteran vanguard for protecting sensitive data. Michael's actually got a great background. He used to serve as the head of information security and risk management at Loblaw Companies Limited, and numerous other senior level info and cybersecurity roles in the areas of industries like oil and gas, finance, healthcare, and retail as well. Michael provides controls and guidance today, and he's a consultant for numerous companies and acts as a risk executive advisor to various boards. So we're very, very fortunate to have Michael join us today because we all know that many of us are currently sitting at our home. I'm currently at our Brooklyn office, and as you can see, I'm the only person in here today because everybody else in our team is at home. And as we've made that transition to working from an at-home workspace, obviously the threats of cyber risk have also sort of shifted and expanded with that. Cyber criminals don't sleep, and they're really taking advantage of this opportunity to prey on vulnerable home workstations. So we're going to jump right into Michael's presentation. And just so everybody knows, feel free to ask questions throughout. And if they fit inside of where we're at, I'll make sure that we address it at that time. Otherwise, ask your question and we will make sure it gets addressed by the end. And with that, I'm going to hand it right over to Michael, and I will be managing the chat as we go. So Michael, over to you. Can Michael not hear me now? Okay, hold on.
Great. Thanks very much, Kyle. So good morning, everybody. There we go. Hopefully everyone can hear me now and see me. We're having some hiccups, it looks like, in the world of cyber, or in the world of IT, and that's par for the course these days. But either way, good morning. Hopefully we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about cyber risks and remote working. As you know, we just heard, remote working today seems to be really kind of the par for the course these days. And, with it, we're going to learn comes cyber risk, but things that can be managed and things that hopefully we'll cover in the next little while, and hopefully enlighten and educate everyone here a bit more about what those risks are. As mentioned, my background is quite diverse, 20 years plus in IT, or more than 20 in IT, but 20 specifically in the cybersecurity space. Most recently at the corporate level, at working for Loblaw Companies with Shoppers Drug Mart included, but the last couple of years being head of and founder of Risk Aware, which is a small cybersecurity boutique providing security services. So one thing that I talk about a lot, and when I do public speaking, I love quoting Stephen Covey, is this quote, and by far it really leads to it still being very important and very relevant these days, in that the one thing that's certain in business is the uncertainty. And there's definitely a world right now where we're living in a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty on what's happening with COVID, what's happening or where we're going to land, what's going to happen, how are we going to work and do things in the future, or even if it's only the near or medium term future. But with that, of course, comes business and the business functionality, how businesses are going to operate. And, of course, with that, of course, is also the risk of cyber and how that comes in. Really, we're in a world where businesses are adapting, and businesses are adapting, well, even before pre-COVID, adapting to, transforming the way they work, the way they sell, the way they operate, the growth in technology, the ability to adapt and transform, but now they're going to adapt because of COVID as well, and that as well is bringing in this new way that the cyber risks are causing companies to very quickly change the way they do things. So why are we talking today? Well, let me throw it towards you a couple of stats. So first off, we're looking at remote workers. So pre-COVID, organizations and companies were already doing, or some of them were already having some form of remote worker program. And officially, and again, stats are stats, but 40% of companies had some form of policy on how to have their employees work remotely, or they had a program to work from home. Some companies or some employees in the office or at the workplace, some working at home. But really the numbers were, a small percentage of workers would actually be doing that at any given time. So where they had a program, it was really, really a small group, and that could have been special circumstances. It could have been, just a needs-be basis. But most people were in the workplace. But those numbers have changed huge now, and we're almost in a, for a lot of companies, we've gone from 4 to 5% of employees working remotely to 100% of employees working remotely. Not every company like that, but really a big jump in the way that business has been performed. And of course, with that is the opportunities, and the opportunities come when cyber comes into play. And cyber thieves and cyber hackers are always entrepreneurs of opportunity. And they very much so have jumped on the whole opportunity around COVID in many, many ways. First off, in the first stat, the month over month is just pure hacking, right? They've always been trying to hack, and that number has gone up. This number is a couple of months old. I can't tell you in the last couple of weeks what that number is. I have no doubt that it continues to grow. And that's just sheer volume of what they're trying to do using the typical techniques that they do. And those typical techniques can be phishing attempts. They can be, trying to steal credentials. It can be malware. There are a lot of ways that has proliferated over time. But on top of that, we're seeing a large number of internet traffic. So internet traffic has always been quite large, but on some days we're seeing 5-6 times the normal traffic flow over the internet. And that's because we have people now who are online, more connections, more people connecting into websites, into Office 365 or email, or into back-end systems to access the back-end for their companies. And phishing attempts, so that is, email attempts to get people to do something unbeknownst to them. And email, by the way, being the number one threat vector for organizations in terms of how they get hacked or how they get compromised. Since February has soared quite dramatically, and 600% is really the number that we've been using. And, that really doesn't fare well when we have a lot of workers and a lot of employees who are working remotely, working in an area where they're by themselves, do not have the security controls and the capabilities that they might have had when they sit in their office, don't have access to their IT and tech support staff at their fingertips or down the hall. And really, that number then puts a lot of strain and a lot of stress on individuals in their ability to combat these threats that are now hitting them more and more and more. So what kind of risks are we seeing today? Well, I broke it down kind of into 5 groups. First off, there is the risks around video conferencing, and we're going to talk about that. And specifically, the Zoom piece, because Zoom as a video conferencing tool has gotten a lot of publicity in the last few weeks. We're going to talk about phishing, which, we just mentioned, home networks, and home networks, of course, being really how, if you're sitting at home like I am today, you're relying very much so on your home network and how you're connecting up with your own service provider, whether it be Bell or Rogers or TELUS, whoever it may be, and, where those weaknesses may lie. the new malware that seems to be growing up there, and really our devices, and the fact that, as I mentioned, without that rigor of security controls that we have in the office, we're really running our own systems in our own ways and not all having the capabilities that we really need to have put in place. So I want to start with video conferencing, and I want to start specifically with Zoom. So, there are a lot of video platforms out there today. We're using Click Meeting for this one, but we have Zoom, we have Microsoft Teams, we have WebEx, GoToMeeting. There are a lot of products that are out there today, but the one that really has stood out in terms of users has been Zoom. And Zoom has skyrocketed to have, I think, close to 20 million users worldwide now. Part of it because it's been free, and they have pieces that don't require membership fees, and you can literally get on and start using it for free and continue to use it through COVID. But Zoom, through all its popularity, has attracted some nefarious activities. And the term you might have heard of in the last couple of weeks has been Zoom bombing. And, Zoom bombing has really been quite a pain and a burden onto Zoom and to its users, and really in a detrimental way. So what is bombing? Well, really what has happened is threat actors have found a way to intercept and join and get onto Zoom meetings without permission. And this has happened through a lot of ways, through invites for meetings that have been posted somewhere public, like on Facebook, on scenarios where they have been able to determine, the sequence of meeting ID numbers, because they're sequential, and have just tried to click on, and suddenly a threat actor can find its way into a Zoom meeting as a participant and kind of slide in unbeknownst. They're yet another participant, and then depending on the settings, have been able to take over the meeting, take over a screen share, and then start sharing information that really has not been something that we have wanted, or really that has been kind of part of, I would say, the meeting itself. And some of that has been quite nefarious. Some has just been kind of nuisance and disruptive, but there have been actors, whether they be true cyber actors or just activists jumping on. We've heard reports of religious ceremonies being broken into and having discussions about the Holocaust and other inappropriate things. And then we've had, racist slurs and inappropriate content shared in screens, and then hosts are left scrambling to try to stop this from happening and figure out how to get this. And obviously very, very disruptive and very inappropriate, and all for something that isn't have any necessary financial gains, but really have been, to take advantage of, weaknesses in setting up Zoom and using it. And, for that, Zoom has taken a lot of flack. And we'll talk about it, a little later on, about what Zoom has done and what you can do to protect that. But, it is important for everyone to understand that there are these threats and these weaknesses that lie out there. But there are other pieces that have risk too. Microsoft Teams, which of course is part of Office 365, is not immune to this as well. A couple weeks ago, some security researchers found a weakness in the code in Microsoft Teams, and forced Microsoft to very, very quickly go out and patch this. The good news was that it was corrected before really it got out there and started getting abused and infiltrated. But really, it was an interesting thing. Without getting too deep into the technical weeds, they found a weakness in being able to post GIF photos, like the one in this screen at the bottom, into a team chat session. And just by looking at that picture, was able to download malware and, steal the credentials, and then be able to use those credentials and act differently. And, a very complex task to do, and quite smart to figure it out. Luckily, it was found from a good guy versus the bad guy, and Microsoft was very quick to fix that. But again, an opportunity that presented itself, trying to look to the abilities or the inabilities of users who may not be security savvy and be able to figure all that out, and to take advantage of opportunities that exist purely from someone trying to use something like video conferencing to be able to continue to perform their function as a remote worker, or someone being able to try out of a meeting. By all means, video conferencing and these chats have really helped organizations continue to do business. I must be on 6, 7, 8 video conferences a day today, and they really have allowed the continuation of business. But as we just said, that risk sits there that has to be taken seriously. We've looked at malware. Now, malware, or what we used to call viruses in the old day, malware has been always around, but the malware has actually, a lot of it, while we've always had the continuation of the malware as it's always existed, new malware has come up that is really related to COVID-19 itself. They've really tried to find ways to utilize people's angst and worries about COVID to click on links, click on files, believing that they're clicking onto the right thing, when in fact they're not. And Google, see from this just a couple weeks ago, last month, 18 million emails, either phishing for credentials or with a malicious payload like malware, that have landed in people's inboxes, or almost landed in people's inboxes, with those threats kind of present. Here's one as an example. An email that someone might have received. This one coming from the Center of Disease Control, or CDC, down in the US. An email like this, it looks very official, it looks legitimate, it looks like it's trying to provide some information. Maybe somebody had signed up on a mailing list, or it looked to get some information, and at the bottom of the screen, right here in the very last line, you can see that there was a link. And when you hover over that link, you can see that the actual URL or website to go to is not a CDC website, but this other website that really holds that malicious payload. And right here, and had someone clicked on that, they would have gone to a website that may have held something that is looking for credentials, maybe asked for an email address, or had a file and said, hey, download this for more information, and dropped that malicious payload onto their computer. Another example here, and it's cut out a bit, but again, you can see another email looking to be from the CDC, and again with a link at the bottom to go to somewhere that is not legitimate. And you think about it, when you get these, a lot of people really don't pay attention. They click on it, they're reading, they're going through it quickly. They want to grasp more information about what's happening with COVID-19. Everyone wants to know more. They truly believe that they're clicking on the right thing. And lo and behold, it's something that is wrong. And we see phishing emails all the time, but people have been letting their guard down because of what's happening out in the world. And the threat actors again are looking to take advantage of that with these emails, as an example, that again are looking to steal your information or to have malware on them. This one, not one that was related to CDC, but looking like an internal email. And, for those who are on Office 365, sometimes you get these type of documents. Office 365 has has emails that pop up like this when someone is sharing a file with you through OneDrive. On this one, you would click on a review document. It would take you to a website that looks like Office 365 but isn't. You click on a spreadsheet or a Word document, and lo and behold, that would be the malware that you would open, thinking that Karen, in this case, had sent you an email that was very important for you to read. So, it's not always something that looks from external. We also have those threats that can look like they're internal as well and can be very detrimental and very dangerous that way. So, when we look at malware, and this screen, has been around for a couple years as an example. This is the classic ransomware threat that has come. So malware, of course, can do many, many things. It can steal data. It can lock up your computer. It can delete files. But ransomware, which has been around for a bit, has been that model of encrypting your files on your computer and then trying to extort or threaten you and get money from you to release those type of files. And ransomware has not slowed down at all. Again, has taken a bit of a turn in terms of, different threat vector, but nonetheless has still stayed there and still, provided that risk to organization. And the last thing we need right now is to have, encrypted files and have malware on our systems, especially when, if it were to happen and you're sitting in your home office and something happens to your computer, Jim or Bob or Sue from, IT is not easily accessible and able to come to your house and help fix your computer or for you to get another computer. So, it has led people to say, oh my gosh, I have to deal with this, or potentially, pay out ransoms because, they're at the mercy of capabilities and limited capabilities. And, that is what the threat actors and the hackers are really wanting to see. This slide here, are two pieces. The one on the right is showing as an example the increase of email scams related to COVID-19 or coronavirus. You can see they really started to skyrocket. I know the print's very small. Trust me, it's basically telling you that over the last few weeks, it really has gone up. And then on the left has been new certificates that have been registered for SSL. And the reason why that's important is just because, the threat actors are registering domain names, they're building websites, and hey, even a malicious website has to have a good SSL certificate on it to make sure it's safe. So they're making sure that it looks all safe by putting on a certificate. And again, just the rise, related to those COVID-19 related domain names and websites, you can see a big jump on terms of the SSL certificates related to that. So, that kind of covers our area related to malware. When we look at our home network, so, I think a lot of people, Kyle being the exception right now, but the rest of us are kind of sitting at home. We're plugged into some form of our home network, and the home network that we probably all have had, or most of us at least have had, because that's how we connect up everything while we're at home. We have our Wi-Fi at home. We may have a couple things plugged in. Again, our service provider has given us a router. We may have Wi-Fi or a separate device or an all-in-one. We plug in our cables or we configure, and off we go. We have internet, and that's great. And now we're suddenly using it beyond just checking our Facebook or doing our online shopping that we've always done at home. Now we're having to use it for business as well, and that has put a little bit of strain on things. And there are a couple of concerns that we have in this area. First off is, the reality is most people, when they, get these home networks or they plug them in, they really haven't put a lot of thought in terms of the security related to those threat vectors and to security at all. They've just been happy. Hey, look, I configured it. I got Wi-Fi, I have internet, all is good. But, they've done a couple things to kind of leave it insecure. They may have, left the default username and password on the device. They didn't change the password on the wireless router. They maybe haven't been keeping it up to date in terms of security for features or firmware, or they maybe just have not turned on the enhanced security features because, again, the main priority has been to have some form of connectivity. Some of the things we see, these screenshots that you might see over here, the one on the top, is an example where your computer might tell you that it's insecure, but you're okay, you're using it anyway. Or when you look in, and the neat thing about on your computer, when you look at Wi-Fi, you can see all the Wi-Fi networks around you. Yours hopefully is in there somewhere, but you have your neighbors. You may, if you're in a condo or an apartment building, see a ton of them because they're all beaconing out signals, and people are have to make sure that they are actually on a secure network. And where Wi-Fi works without security, really we should never be connecting up even to our own networks without secure wireless being hand in hand on there. And again, we'll talk about that a little later on in terms of how to secure that up. But when we look at scenarios like this, there's opportunity for, again, the threat actors to take advantage. One is that if the network is insecure, you may have a threat actor who lives in your neighborhood or in your building, and they can see these insecure networks and can jump on, and suddenly they're accessing on your home network. And depending on how you've configured your computer, you may have it wide open that people can scan your network and your home network and access things, again, based on how you've configured your systems. Or, they may be, setting up and trying to lure you into connecting to some Wi-Fi that doesn't belong to you, which has always been the threat with public Wi-Fi, with the Starbucks cafes or any other Wi-Fi that exists out in airports and hotels. And try to trick you into connecting into this. So, where you may feel safe because you're at home and you're on a network that is kind of out from the world of, where the threat actors are. And why would anyone attack, this little one IP belonging to you for your home network? The reality is, the hackers really don't care. They're going to see what is accessible. And if they find an IP address belonging to your home network, and there's some way for them to get in there and look around, chances are at some point they may find their way into your home network and onto your computer. And, the threats then, really continue. So, we look, for instance, here, and, I'm just realizing the slide was it should have been connected to the malware. But these are some examples of, the type of malware that is beaconing out there that is unique to COVID. So, we really sit there and we look at all these threats that exist. We look at the dangers that are lurking out there because they continue to be really dangerous for us. Up on the screen, is a map. This is one that popped out a couple weeks ago. A website that was saying, hey, come here and take a look at this live action website on where COVID is brewing. And you can see in this time, it was showing big spikes in Europe, and as you can see in New York, people wanted to go here and click on this little arrow here, under the numbers, and see a live action timeline. This website, though, was fake, and this site was actually there to try to steal information from you, try to get you to click on things. Again, for the average user, they would click on it, but really they were going somewhere they shouldn't be, but they didn't know. They do a search. This is what came up in Google. They click on it, and this is where they were brought to. So it becomes really dangerous to go out there. And on sites like this, they're not all a malicious payload. This one at coronavirusrealtime.com, and I can say that because I believe the site was taken down. This one was trying to do cryptojacking, which is another form of taking over, parts of your computer. This one not to drop malicious code, but this one actually to help generate Bitcoin and cryptocurrency at the expense of your computer. And doing it within a web browser, and basically as long as you were on this website, the threat actors, were utilizing the resources on your computer to try to generate a Bitcoin. I'll save that for another day because that's a whole talk on its own on how that happens. By the way, a good, if you really want a website for looking at true statistics, you should go to one that's operated by Microsoft, which is at Bing, bing.com/COVID. Bing being the unsuccessful second up to Google in terms of search engines, but bing.com/COVID, which is a great site for information and for statistics related to COVID numbers throughout the world. And then we talk about patching, and I don't want to, be forgotten about patching, because I think for a lot of people, there has been some forgetting about the need to do patching. It becomes more difficult, when you're at the office or you bring your work computer in, you plug it onto the network. There are a lot of security controls in there that, see you're on there, backs, does patching as soon as you're logged on the network, ensures that the patches are done. They can follow up if there's a problem, they can fix it, or they can send someone to fix your computer. But it's a little different when you're working remotely, because you are, really in a scenario where you don't have the capabilities that you might have had, and you have to take a little bit more into place to do manually even, or to have a little bit of understanding on what may have to happen to you or by you in order to fix this. A couple of weeks ago or last month, Microsoft had to put out this emergency fix because Windows 10 had a bug related to remote working. And while it wasn't a security threat, this particular bug was preventing people from actually accessing properly the capabilities to remotely get onto things. So, it was detrimental to the productivity of users, because all of a sudden there was this huge increase, and Microsoft said, oh my goodness, people are all remote working, and suddenly they cannot tie into here. And the need to have this patch put on, but all of a sudden there's this patch, and depending on the type of computer you have, it may be installed automatically, it may not. A user might be at home saying, why can't I connect? They don't understand, when in fact there was something, all they had to do was to run the ability to patch their system, and then it would have been fixed. One of the ways that people can go in, if you're on a Windows machine, for instance, is go into Windows Update, which is under Settings and Security, and Windows after version 10 has, tried to take it upon itself to automatically patch things. This was a screenshot from me from a couple weeks ago. My machine, as you would expect, is up to date, but every day, Microsoft drops another antivirus signature package for Windows Defender, which is the AV that I use, and that's why you see that there. So it's one of those ways. If you have an older system, for instance, on Windows 7, you'd have to go in here, you'd have to manually check for updates, and it would check it and then tell you, and you'd have to click on download and go ahead and install to make those things. I see a question here about Macs. We have a slide here. Mac is no different. Mac came out with a security update here for Catalina, which is their latest version of their operating system. They came out with this one, quite large, as you can see, was handling a lot of security bugs. And, Apple doesn't patch as often as Microsoft does, but this was an update, so 10.15.4, which they put out during the COVID release to deal with more security post the start of COVID. And, Macs, again, you should be going into settings, looking at that and making sure you're running the latest version. I'll always tell you that you should keep your systems patched. I think it's inherent on everyone to be looking at their systems to make sure those are patched, if they're not done automatically, to make sure that they have those security capabilities and those security features turned on.
Great. And just a question on that too. So I'm if I'm using my own home computer and using that as my new workstation, the employer can't necessarily ask me to do patch updating and things like that. My question, I guess, is around recommending how can employers sort of encourage that behavior if an employee is currently using their home computer and not using the workstation, like a workstation issued computer.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Some people do are using their home computers, and part of it has been, the sudden, work from home mandate, and either they had a desktop at the office, or their computer was left at work and they weren't able to access it, and they've been connecting up through the home computer. I think it is for employers. I think part of that is to try to lay out kind of some of the asks that they're going to have, or some of the requirements that they have. There's some great material that's out there, and I'm happy, to share that with anyone on this. My contact information will be at the end. But there's some great resources to help employers reach out to their employees and help them better understand and kind of put them in a bit of control of what they kind of can do, either based on what you're hearing today, or in the case of things like home computers, on how to patch, why to patch, because again, home computers, it's not all about work. Everyone should be patching their home systems as well, just for the sake of their home systems. And everything that we're talking about today really, where it has a lot to do with the work security. Home users are not immune either, and there's some pieces there for them to look at as well. So great question.
And just on this too, a piece of Linda's question. So a lot of office environments are PC based in the world of security, but now there's some people using their MacBook at home now instead, or something like that. Is there any other concern that a Apple user needs to have, or a Mac user needs to have, if the rest of their organization is in a PC secure environment?
So there's always been I'll call it an old wives' tale, that Mac computers are immune to security threats, and it's an interesting thing. I can tell you that that's not true. Where Macs have had less security threats that have come upon them, it really has been because hackers have really focused on Windows machines to find vulnerabilities, because Windows machines really are the vast majority of the machines out there, and obviously by finding a weakness or a gap in a Windows machine, they can hit more machines, have a better probability of getting through. But Macs have their problems as well. Apple has been working to try to patch, and of course patching is a big piece of that. Antivirus, should be a part of Mac computers as well. And really, I would say that, employers really should be ensuring that antivirus is installed and available on Macintosh computers as well, because those threats are still there as well, just not as many. So, they should, Mac users should be taking the same precautions. Things like home networks and the like, those go beyond the computer, and those are kind of universal, no matter what kind of machine that you have. But stealing your credentials through email, all those pieces, it really doesn't matter on the computer itself. It's the malware and the weaknesses on the machines that really determine between, Windows or Mac, or even Linux for some users, in terms of the operating systems. By extension, that also goes to those that, may be using an iPad Pro. Mac OS is different from the OS used for iPads. Again, those should be patched no differently through, the availability of those latest updates that are coming from Apple or Microsoft.
Okay, great. So I'll let you dive back in, or unless you want to answer this follow-up question from Linda now, or
Yeah, maybe Linda, I'll hold that to the end, but we can take a note of that, and I definitely have some recommendations I can provide for you. So very quickly, there have been security incidents out there. Unfortunately, these three examples have all been attacks against organizations that have been very much working on fighting the COVID-19. The U.S. Department of Health, had a cyber attack, related to COVID-19. They tried to overload the systems through what is known as the denial of service attack, and brought down their systems. And where it failed, ultimately it was disruptive. And we don't like hearing that. We're all trying to deal with the ability to get out of this pandemic. But here we have an attack against the Department of Health. The World Health Organization had a group of hackers, try to build a fake, or they did build a fake website to try to steal credentials, to log in from staff members. They created false email addresses to try to get people to donate to what they thought was a legitimate charity. Again, taking away money and looking at those opportunities. And then HMR at the bottom, had a ransomware attack. Again, they were a research facility working on a vaccine. Again, all of these, detrimental and really negative, but taking advantage of, websites and organizations. They're trying to focus on other things, and, cybersecurity may have taken a backseat. So, I throw in this slide only to kind of show how, we put up security and we put up these barriers to try to protect things. We think we're doing the right things, but, hackers find a way around it. And, either it's this way because we build things with good intentions, thinking that we've put in the right security, or we have to make security simple, because the priority is operations, whether it be I have to get through that door in order to do my job, or, I'm grateful that I can just click on and I'm able to launch into a Zoom meeting and they can actually hear me and see me. That was the highlight of my day, that the Zoom meeting worked, but really haven't looked at any of the other security, because the number one priority has just been able to do my job. So I want to spend kind of the last time really on, tips for staying secure. So we've talked about a lot of things on, what the risks are out there. There are things that you can do to make yourself a little safer. So first off, with Zoom. Now Zoom has gone to great lengths over the last couple of weeks to make themselves more safe. For starters, they went out and purchased an encryption company. One of the things that Zoom took a lot of flack on was that they've always touted themselves as being a very safe platform with encryption. The reality was they weren't really using encryption. So they went out to they bought an encryption company. They're trying to turn on that encryption. If you're using Zoom, they put out a new version, by the way, version 5. I encourage all of you to upgrade it if you have it installed on your computer. Version 5, they're actually going to force you to upgrade that over the next couple of weeks, but they are wanting you to do that now. Obviously, that brings in a lot of the new security features and the encryption. Just from the admin perspective, you can use two-factor authentication. That's available to you. And there are a lot of settings that are in there. So, they very knee-jerk quickly, to stop the Zoom bombing, they turned off or changed a lot of the default settings. So they changed the default to put people into a lobby or a waiting room so that they can't automatically jump into meetings. They took off the ability by default for people to screen share without permission. So they did these things to try to stop the bombing to happen. But there are settings in there that you can do. If you go into the settings and under security, here's some screenshots on them. You can see that you can enable the waiting room. You can control what people are able to do. You can mute, unmute by a click of a button in case people start talking. And then one of the features buried in there is this data center region, which they added as well. They took some flack because some of their traffic was being routed through China, although their people didn't know that, and that's what made them very angry. So now you can actually select the data centers and the servers that you're connecting to to be something that you allow. US is on by default, but if you don't want it to be in Eurasia or in South America or Europe, you can click on these settings here as examples to change those way things are done. Other things that you can do, when it comes to email, you want to be careful on the emails that you're getting. You want to make sure that you are not clicking on links that are unsafe. Really take a good look at those phishing emails. Hopefully you're still behind some form of corporate or company email platform, that's trying to do some of this for you, but always think twice before downloading files. You're always better to be getting access to files that are in OneDrive or on a company portal than in an email. So be careful on what you click on. Disable digital assistants. So this one is interesting. I didn't mention it before. Some people haven't thought about this, but if you have an Alexa at home or Google Home or some other device, you do realize, hopefully, that is always in a listening mode. And you want to be cautious when you're having conversations, especially on information that you might be talking about that is related to your company and may be confidential information, that you're not within earshot of your Alexa Google Assistant. Again, it can be listening. You might have it, it might accidentally pick things up. Google and Amazon are always collecting some form of data. That's part of the price of having these great devices, but there are also ways for you to disable them or turn them off, or just frankly go into another room and be out of earshot of those things. They're not good, and I highly recommend that you just not have them around you when you're doing that type of work, information working on your computers. And it's a scenario where you want to do more with your home Wi-Fi. You should be logging in. All wireless routers have a web portal that you can go to. Bell or Rogers, whomever provided that to you. Usually they sit on a IP address 192.168.1.1 or 2.1, 3.1, something like that. Look for that information. If you're not sure, contact your internet service provider. But when you go in there, you can make sure that some of the security is turned on. And WPA 2 or 3 is really an encryption standard. It makes sure that the Wi-Fi that you're having is encrypted and that nobody can kind of break into it. And consider changing that default password that you're using on there, because there's a lot of risk attached on that. I want to ensure that you are keeping those secure in what you're doing. Other things that you can do with your Wi-Fi, you want to, as I mentioned, have that complex password. You might want to change the admin credential as well and not have it be admin as the username. Change the network name. When you click on that, you see, whether it be on a Mac or Windows, and you click on that Wi-Fi icon, you can see all the names of the systems around you. I really encourage you not to use something that gives up either your address or your name. Try to use something that is really unique or has irrelevancy to anything. I'll tell you that mine is a 9-digit number. Nobody knows that it's me. I don't brag about it or advertise it, but I know which one is mine, when I connect up or when I add new machines. So consider doing that. Again, that will be part of the settings that are on your wireless router. Turn off plug and play, which is sometimes a feature that allows easy access. Remote management, which allows people to access your router over the internet. You really don't want that. I think a lot of them put it in because some people would want to configure it while they're at work or at the office or while traveling. There's no need for that. And you want to keep the firmware up to date and make sure that you are keeping that secure. We talked about patching your systems. I mentioned it again. Go into the settings, whether it be on a Mac or in Windows. Go to where the security feature is. It will tell you if you need an update. If it's there and it suggests you do it, please go and do it. and make sure you're running the latest software. If it says there are no updates to be found, which is often the case with Windows 10, that's fantastic. But know that not all the patches are automatic. Windows, for instance, just put out a new feature set for Windows 10. I believe it's 1909, which is a version. So, if you're used to the old days of, where they had new versions of Windows, whether it be XP, and then Windows 7, and then Windows 8, and then Windows 10, just to know as a Windows user, all versions going forward will be called Windows 10, and they'll just come out with new versions of it. But those ones are quite large. They don't necessarily force a automatic install of them, so that might sit there, and if you see it, that also, besides being chock full of new features, also has security benefits to it as well that you should consider. Use a VPN. So, a VPN, some organizations will have given VPN to their employees or to their staff to connect up to the office. A VPN is basically an encryption piece that allows a secure connection between your computer and the destination. And, if that is provided from your organization to access it, you should use it. There are also third-party VPNs that you can purchase on your own that allow VPN connectivity and encryption to anything that you're going to that aren't necessarily related to work. There's some consideration in there as well. They're a good thing to have when you're connecting to other unsafe websites or when you're traveling. I know a lot of people aren't traveling these days for business, but a VPN is a good way to do that.
Michael, just for you, because there was a question before on the mobile versions of VPN devices. I guess even on a home-based network, or if someone's out on a walk or something like that and still doing their work. Do you have any recommendations from or how sort of maybe like even like a what to look for from a quality VPN from a mobile perspective versus not?
Yeah, so there are a lot of, on a mobile, you're seeing less VPN options because mobile devices, Android and iOS, are, have less threats as relates to malware because, you're using applications and you're relying heavily on the application itself and the security within it versus, you're not just downloading something, in both Apple and Android and Google, go to great lengths to try to ensure that the applications that are in the App Store and the Google Play Store have been vetted and already are secure, and building some confidence that you're downloading something that has already been ensured that it's safe. So that's saying there are less VPN opportunities. There are VPNs that you can go out. So you may see some of these on commercials on TV that talk about that. NordVPN is one of them, Pure VPN. There are many VPN providers out there. I wouldn't worry too much about mobile because a lot of the threats aren't there. If you really are concerned about VPN, I would start with your computer, your home computer or your laptop, and really, that area. But, all the third parties have a mobile app that can be installed and provide that same type of VPN protection.
Great.
I'll just go through the last couple points and we'll open up to questions. Mm-hmm. As an employer, we talked about only 40% of organizations having some form of policy in place. If you're connecting as an employer piece, you should consider having some security policies in place for remote working. If you haven't done it, you should probably get it done now. Just kind of laying out the governance and the frameworks on, how people connect, why they're connecting, what they should do, being kind of in that area of knowing what their responsibilities are and what the employees, need to do, whether it be, shoring up their Wi-Fi, getting the patches on, the pieces that we've talked about. It all starts with a good policy, and that can be built out by the employer to really put into place. Same with security awareness. A lot of the security awareness should always be part of an employer's platform to provide to their employees. A lot of the awareness now, though, should be focused on the COVID-19 and on the remote pieces. There is great material out there, again, feel free to contact me. I can put you in touch with some of that. But a lot of it has to do with detecting the phishing threats, on social engineering, on the threats of remote working, much like we're learning today. And security awareness is a big part for the employer to provide either directly to their employees, or provide them with some links to set them off in the right direction. And then try to keep, where you can, and I know that not everyone has a work computer, try as much as you can to do your work on the work computer and not to use your home computer. If you have to use your home computer and you're on something like Office 365, and they've provided you with something like OneDrive or SharePoint, try to put your data there instead of storing it on your home computer. By storing it in the company provided portal or file features, you're putting it into a safe avenue that is encrypted and protected, versus your home computer that, again, if someone were to get access to your home network or through your Wi-Fi, would be able to access it because it's sitting on a computer.
Michael, on that point, there was a question about,
Yeah.
so I think I'm going to click back to that slide. So it's avoid using your own cloud storage solution, but if your employer is creating a secured cloud storage solution, that is something that you think is fine, but it's more so you're having people not use your own cloud area. Is that what?
Yeah, I think, if your employer provides you with a cloud area, whether it be Dropbox or Box or OneDrive, you should use it, right? And that's where you should put your business files, because, and I'll use Microsoft as an example. Microsoft OneDrive, it's accessible for your company. It's part of Office 365. The data, to move it there is encrypted. Microsoft encrypts it and keeps it safe. You can put protection around it, and then it's not sitting locally on your computer. It's protected by some access controls that can ensure that it's safe. Plus, you don't have to worry about your computer crashing and your data all being lost by your computer and your hard drive failing, which can always happen. And it puts it somewhere safe. If you don't have that, again, if you only have a personal cloud, that's probably your next choice, because again, those same security features will be there. But really, you're putting it, they'll be safe as well. But they're not part of your business ecosystem in terms of having it be part of where files should be for an organization.
Great. There's a couple of different, I know you got jumping down to trust here, just a couple of questions on this that came up through there. So one was around the policies for remote working. To what, I guess it's almost like, what extent can a company sort of mandate a policy? There was a thing about a comment about, should a company mandate that employees need to unplug their listening devices like the Alexa during the day? And that would be an actual company policy. Like, have you seen that? And is that something that's even really possible?
So, I'd say the first part is, should there be policies? Absolutely, right? And that's part of the governance side of what organizations should do. All companies should have a cybersecurity policy, a very broad one, that's in place for anything. Even, pre-COVID days, there should be a cybersecurity policy that governs that. Part of that should be, kind of a how to remotely work and be a piece of that. Can you really mandate hey, turn that off? Probably not, because, you're in someone's house and it's something that doesn't belong to them. I think that's where, it's part of the language around, awareness and making people aware of the dangers of it. And then, suggesting or recommending or asking them to not be within, work somewhere where one of those isn't, nearby. And leave it to the employee then to figure out, oh, maybe I need to turn it off, versus, go to another room. But, kind of, put the wording in that suggests that, they shouldn't be working in an area where it might have something like that, within earshot. It's, I think it's no different than, wording in there that says, hey, if you're doing work, in a Starbucks, you shouldn't be somewhere where everyone's overhearing your conversation, or everyone can read your screen over your shoulder. It's the same kind of idea, right? It's to say, that shouldn't be set up that way, but it leaves it then for the person to figure out how to stay compliant or follow up on the suggestions made by their employer.
Great, thank you.
Were there any other questions,
Yeah.
Kyle?
That's the ones that we have right now. Like once we get to the end, we can jump back and get a couple other ones addressed here. But
Sure. Well, I think we're just wrapping up. I want to just say, from my point, and then we'll open up for more questions, it's all about trust. A big piece of the trust is, as an employer, you're trusting now your employees that are, remote from you, that you don't really have the direct access that you once had. You may not have, as an employer, the capability to patch your systems or to troubleshoot the same way you did from an IT support perspective. Or to have those, team meetings. You're relying heavily on, feature sets like Zoom or Teams or other remote tools. It is all about making sure that that's done and, build that trust with the employees to make sure that they're doing their part from the home side and you're doing your part, in trying to use those security features as they exist. It's always incumbent on everyone when it comes to cybersecurity to ensure that they're doing everything they can. Hopefully in this last hour you've kind of learned about some of the threats that exist. Some of the things that you can do about it. There are pieces that can be taken to build more safety in there on both sides of the house, whether it be the employer, the host of the meetings, or the employee and the user on the home network. But really kind of having both sides, take security as, kind of one of their priorities and, say, hey, it's great that I can do the job, but now I need to also do the job securely. And, with that, I kind of want to, finish off that part, and, open it up to any more questions. I know we're a couple minutes over, but if there are any more questions, from the other side.
Super, and thank you, Michael. And so I will ask a couple of final questions here, and then we'll wrap this up. So Wayne asked about how do you stop an IP address from showing? I don't know if you need more context to that question, or if you have that, if that makes sense for you.
How do you stop an IP? Yeah, so from an IP perspective, when you're at home, you're at the mercy of the IP address that's provided to you by your security provider. A VPN is one way to kind of protect the traffic that flows through it. Mostly, in most cases, Bell or Rogers or TELUS, whoever your provider is, changes your IP address every once in a while because it benefits them. So, it becomes very random and, you have to think that a threat actor isn't going to necessarily, say, oh, I'm going to go after Michael and find out what his IP address and go after that. They're probably going to look at a whole slew of IP addresses, do a scan of all those IP addresses and see which ones can suddenly have, gaps or openings that they can find their way in. So, where, you might have one IP address today and a different one tomorrow, the threat really doesn't change because the threat actors will just scan that other range of IP addresses and, try to find you that way as well. So, it's, it's something I wouldn't focus on too much. But to know that, the IP address ultimately is in the control of your service provider.
Super, and just something that you actually, so you sent me the presentation to this webinar a couple days ago, and you did something that I've not yet seen from a security perspective. I've seen different things, but when you sent me the file, so just get inside the world of insurance, we've sometimes send big printed file documents to people. So we've really adapted quickly to moving towards we've already been paperless, but just continuing to move towards that paperless future. So having to send large PDFs over email is not effective. So we've been using some other tools. But when you sent me that file, it actually had a request for a token back. So I thought that was neat, but it made me think of two things. One, what did you do for that? I was going to ask you offline, but maybe you could just let people know because that was great. But two, where do you go or how do you find all those neat little additional security features for the different types of programs that you utilize that, an IT person here or a business leader may want to make sure they start thinking about with each new sort of digital transaction they're making?
Sure. And so to answer your first part, when I shared my file with Kyle, I had my file in OneDrive. So, as a company, I use OneDrive and Office 365. And all I did was literally, it's quite simple in OneDrive if you have it. I had my file that was, on my computer. I right-clicked it, I clicked share, and I was able to either copy a link direct within OneDrive and copy paste that into an email and send it to Kyle, but that would have had a link on out. Anyone would have accessed it. Instead, I sent him a request from OneDrive. OneDrive sent him an email directly saying, hey, someone's giving you access to it. Here's the link, and it all stayed within OneDrive, and I could actually set whether or not he could edit it, whether he could download it, whether he could manipulate it, all those features, and those are all part of pieces like Office 365 or other tools that are out there. A lot of them, Microsoft's working so hard to continue their enhancement. They spend billions every year just on security, and I'm not, advertising Microsoft, but just kind of give you the idea of the importance of security for organizations that are selling products out. But in the case of Microsoft, they're constantly adding new features to Teams, to Office 365. And, in my case, it was for OneDrive to make sure that I was providing this file safe and secure to Bryson versus, sending it, and I could have sent it in an email. I very much discourage wherever I go and whoever I talk to from sending files, especially sensitive ones. And of course, this wasn't necessarily sensitive, but files shouldn't be sent by email. It's not a super safe way to send things. So where you can put them somewhere safe, like a OneDrive or Dropbox or something, and share the link out specifically to your user. But in terms of the second part of the question, there are a lot of feature sets. If your organization is using Office 365, a lot of that is part of the subscription that you have. And you should look to looking at it. A lot of that can be learned, just from Googling, Office 365 security features or OneDrive security features to learn all those. If you don't have Office 365, that's okay too. Not everyone does. There are other third-party feature sets that are out there. I also use a product from Citrix called ShareFile, which is another file portal, very similar to Dropbox or Box.com. That allows me to, give access to files and for me to upload them somewhere secure and then someone else to access them somewhere secure, or for them to send them back, which isn't something you can do in OneDrive. Kyle can't send me files back, but, I have a portal to be able to do that. And again, it encourages, safe encrypted communications to ensure that these files don't go out. So, there are a lot of places to learn these things. Security awareness for COVID-19 is another good Google search avenue. Security awareness for remote workers. Any Google search like that will bring up some good feature sets. Just make sure that you're getting it from some company that's reputable, like Microsoft or Amazon or Cisco or Apple or some of the more known providers, and ensuring that the information you're getting is accurate. And again, don't click on too many links within those websites unless you're sure that the provider is giving you a safe avenue to get that information.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. And just reading this last question here. Thanks so much for your time and your dedication to this effort. Your slide on trust is big because, the whole conversation around policy, really, every employee is at home trying the best they can to be as safe and secure as possible, and while still trying to adapt to all these new operating norms. And so it's a balance and a challenge, but really having that generosity to continue to be there for staff and to continue to be there for employees while employees keep adapting and learning too is great. And we just keep learning new things every day. I don't know how many people have got up and unplugged their Alexa from this conversation, or who will right after. And I also saw in here too, I thank the individuals who are choosing to send this webinar recording when they get it to their employees. Please do. Every company that can, avoid a ransomware attack or become a victim of a ransomware attack, is just another business that can sustain and survive through this really challenging time. So again, thank you everybody for the lively conversation. Thank you, Michael, and everybody have a fantastic day. Take care.
Great. Thank you.